Hello, and apologies if you have only one person who's been waiting for me to come on because I realize that I am late, but no excuse. I lost track of the time. That's just the way it is. But yeah, thank you for joining me. This is going to be Lud-in-the-Mist by Hope Mirrlees, Chapter 13. Let's get started. Chapter 13. What Master Nathaniel and Master Ambrose found in the guild hall. Master Nathaniel was much too restless. Okay, my teleprompt suddenly didn't want to wake up. Master Nathaniel was much too restless and anxious to explore the guild hall until the groom returned, whom he had sent with a letter to Luke Hempen. But he must have taken the order to ride night and day literally. In so short a time was he back again in Lud. Master Nathaniel was, of course, enchanted by his dispatch, though he was unable to elicit from him any detailed answers to his eager questions about Ranulph. Though he was unable to elicit from him any detailed answers to his eager questions about Ranulph, but it was everything to know that the boy was well and happy, and it was but natural that the fellow should be bashful and tongue-tied in the presence of his master. But the groom had not, as a matter of fact, come within 20 miles of the widow Jibbidy's farm. In a roadside tavern he had fallen in with a red-haired youth, who had treated him to glass upon glass of an extremely intoxicating wine, and, in consequence, he had spent the night and a considerable portion of the following morning sound asleep on the floor of the tavern. Sorry, there's actually road noise. Aircraft noise. So, this is a Studio Bricks booth that I'm recording from. It's a professional booth. But still, there are certain low noises that will come through. If momentarily. Thankfully, I don't live on a flight path or anything. When he awoke, he was horrified to discover how much time he had wasted, but his mind was set at rest on the innkeeper's giving him a letter from the red-haired youth to say that he deeply regretted having been the indirect cause. To say that he deeply regretted having been the indirect cause of delaying a messenger sent on pressing business by the High Seneschal. In his cup, the groom had boasted of the importance of his errand, and had, in consequence, ventured to possess himself of the letter, which he guaranteed to deliver at the address on the wrapper as soon, or sooner, as the messenger could have done himself. The groom was greatly relieved. He had not been long in Master Nathaniel's service. It was after Yuletide he had entered it. So it was with a heart relieved from all fears for Ranulph and free to throb like a schoolboy's with the lust. So it was with a heart relieved from all fears for Ranulph and okay. So it was with a heart relieved from all fears for Ranulph and free to throb like a schoolboy's with the lust of adventure that Master Nathaniel met Master Ambrose on the night of the full moon at the splendid carved doors of the guild hall. "I say, Ambrose," he whispered. "I feel as if we were lads again and off to rob an orchard." Master Ambrose snorted. He was determined at all costs to do his duty, but it annoyed him that his duty should be regarded in the light of a boyish escapade. The great doors creaked back on their hinges. Shutting them as quietly as they could, they tiptoed up the spiral staircase and along the corridor described by Dame Marigold. Whenever a board creaked under their heavy steps, one inwardly cursing the other for daring to be so stout and unwieldy. One inwardly cursing the other for daring to be so stout and unwieldy. All around them was darkness, except for the little trickles of light cast before them by their two lanthorns. A house with old furniture has no need of guests to be haunted. As we have seen, Master Nathaniel was very sensitive to the silent things, stars, houses, trees, and often in his pipe room after the candles had been lit, he would sit staring at the bookshelves, the chairs, his father's portrait, even at his red. Okay. I just felt like I was speeding up there a bit. The chairs, his father's portrait, even at his red umbrella standing up in the corner, with as great a sense of awe as if he had been a stargazer. But that night, the brooding, invisible presences of the carved panels, the storied tapestries, affected even the hard-headed Master Ambrose. It was as if that silent population was drawing him by an irresistible magnetism into the zone of its influence. If only they would speak or begin to move about, those silent, rooted things. It was like walking through a wood by moonlight. Then Master Nathaniel stood still. This, I think, must roughly be the spot where Marigold found the hollow panel. This, I think, must roughly be the spot where Marigold found the hollow panel, he whispered, and began tapping cautiously along the wainscoting. A few minutes later, he said in an excited whisper, Ambrose, Ambrose, I've got it! Hark! You can hear, can't you? It's as hollow as a drum. Suffering cats, I believe you're right, whispered back Master Ambrose, beginning, in spite of himself, to be a little infected with Nat's absurd excitement. And then, yielding to pressure, the panels slid back, and by the light of their lanthorns they could see a twisting staircase. For a few seconds they gazed at each other in silent triumph. Then Master Nathaniel chuckled and said, "Well, here goes. Down with our buckets into the well. And may we draw up something better than an old shoe or a rotten wall." Wotten? That's not a word. And may we draw something. And may we draw up something better than an old shoe or a rotten walnut. And straight away he began to descend the stairs, Master Ambrose valiantly following him. The stairs went twisting down into the very bowels of the earth. It seemed, but at long last they found themselves in what looked like a long tunnel. Tally-ho, tally-ho, whispered Master Nathaniel, laughing for sheer joy of adventure. Take it at a gallop, Brosy. Okay, I don't know why my app just is not quite. It's not scrolling. It may lead to an open glade, and the deer at bay. And digging him in the ribs, he added, Better sport than moth hunting, eh? Which showed the completeness of their reconciliation. This is very strange. It's just not scrolling here, which is very annoying. Let's see if it does it again. Nevertheless, it was very slowly, and feeling each step, that they groped their way along the tunnel. After what seemed a very long time, Master Nathaniel halted and whispered over his shoulder, "Here we are. There's a door. Oh, thunder and confusion on it. Oh, thunder and confusion on it forever. It's locked." And beside himself with irritation at this unlooked-for obstacle, he began to batter and kick at the door like one demented. He paused a minute for breath, and from the inside could be heard a shrill female voice demanding the password. "Password?" bellowed back Master Nathaniel. "By the sun, moon, and stars, and the golden apples of the west, what—" But before he could finish his sentence, the door was opened from the other side, and they marched into a low, square room, which was lit by one lamp swinging by a chain from the ceiling, for which there seemed but little need, for a light more brilliant than that of any lamp, and yet as soft as moonlight, seemed to issue from the marvellous tapestries that hung on the walls. They were dumb with amazement. This was as different from all the other tapestry that had— Okay, that time it wasn't the teleprompter, it was me. I think I got a little tripped up with the term tapestry. This was as different from all the other tapestry they had ever seen, as is an apple tree in full blossom against a turquoise sky in May to the same tree in November, when only a few red leaves still cling to its branches, and the sky is leaden. Oh, those blues and pinks and brilliant greens! In what miraculous dyes had the silks been dipped? As to the subjects, they were those familiar to every Doromarite: hunting scenes, fugitives chased by the moon, shepherds and shepherdesses tending their azure sheep. But, depicted in these brilliant hues, they were like the ashes of the past, suddenly, under one's very eyes, breaking into flame. High presto! The men and women of a vanished age, noisy, gaudy, dominant, are flooding the streets and driving the living before them like dead leaves. And what was this lying in heaps on the floor? Pearls and sapphires and monstrous rubies? Or windfalls of fruit, marvellous fruit, fallen from the trees depicted on the tapestry? Then, as their eyes grew accustomed to all the brilliance, the two friends began to get their bearings. There could be no doubt as to the nature of that fruit lying on the floor. It was fairy fruit, or their names were not respectively Chanticleer and Honeysuckle. And, to their amazement, the guardian of this strange treasure was none other than their old acquaintance, Mother Tibbs. Her child— this is probably a good point to pull up my recording of character voices to see what Mother Tibbs sounds like. Okay. Okay. Her clear, childlike eyes that shone like lamps out of her seared, weather-beaten face were gazing at them in a sort of mild surprise. "If it isn't Master Hyacinth and Master Josiah!" she exclaimed, adding with her gay young laugh, "To think of their knowing the password!" Then she peered anxiously into their faces. "Are your stockings wearing well yonder? The last pair I washed for you didn't take the soap as they should. Marching down the Milky Way and tripping it beyond the moon is hard on stockings." Clearly she took them for their own fathers. Meanwhile, Master Ambrose was drawing in his breath, with a noise as if he were eating soup, and creasing his double chins, sure signs to anyone who had seen him on the bench that he was getting ready to hector. But Master Nathaniel gave him a little warning nudge, and said cordially to their hostess, Why, our stockings and boots too are doing very nicely, thank you. So you didn't expect us to know the password, eh? Well, perhaps we know more than you think." Then under his breath to Master Ambrose, "By my great-aunt's rump, Ambrose, what was the password?" Then turning again to Mother Tibbs, who was slightly swaying from her hips as if in time to some jig which she alone could hear, he said, "You've got some fine tapestry. I don't believe I've What was the password?" Sorry, I just kind of wanted to really get in there and make that a little bit funnier. "I don't believe I've ever seen finer." She smiled, and then coming close up to him said in a low voice, "Does your worship know what makes it so fine? No? Why, it's the fairy fruit." And she nodded her head mysteriously several times. Master Ambrose gave a sort of low growl of rage, but again Master Nathaniel shot him a warning look, and said in a voice of polite interest, "Indeed, indeed. And where, may I ask, does the, fruit come from?" She laughed merrily. "Oh, why, the gentlemen bring it. All the pretty gentlemen, dressed in green with their knots of ribbons, crowding down in the sunrise from their ships with the scarlet sails to suck the golden apricocks, when all in Lud are fast asleep, and when the cock says, 'Cock-a-doodle-doo! Cock-a-doodle-doo!'" And her voice trailed off, far away and lonely, suggesting somehow the first glimmer of dawn on ghostly hayricks. "And I'll tell you something, Master Nat, cock-o'-the-roost," she went on, smiling mysteriously and coming close up to him. "You'll soon be dead." Then she stepped back, smiling and nodding encouragingly as if to say, "There's a pretty present I've given you. Take care of it." "And as for Mother Tibbs," she went on triumphantly, "she'll soon be fine. She'll soon be a fine lady, like the wives of the senators, dancing all night under the moon." Oops, my thing went skittering again. "The gentlemen have promised." Master Ambrose gave a snort of impatience, but Master Nathaniel said with a good-humoured laugh, "So that's how you think the wives of the senators spend their time, eh? I'm afraid they've other things to do. And as to yourself, aren't you getting too old for dancing?" A slight shadow passed across her clear eyes. Then she tossed her head with the noble gesture of a wild creature and cried, "No, no, as long as my heart dances, my feet will too, and nobody will grow old when the Duke comes back." But Master Ambrose could contain himself no longer. He knew only too well Nat's love of listening to He knew only too well Nat's love of listening to long, rambling talk. Excuse me. Okay, hang on a sec. Especially when there happened to be some serious business on hand. Come, come, he cried in a stern voice. In spite of being crack-brained, my good woman, you may soon find yourself dancing to another tune, unless you tell us in double-quick time who exactly these gentlemen are, and who it was that put you on guard here, and who brings that filthy fruit, and who takes it away. We will cut the fiddle strings that you dance to. This threat was a subconscious echo of the last words he had spoken. This threat was a subconscious echo of the last words he had ever. This threat was a subconscious echo of the last words he had heard spoken by Moonlove. Its effect was instantaneous. Cut the fiddle strings! Cut the fiddle strings! She wailed, adding coaxingly, No, no, pretty master, he would never do that. Would he now? And she turned appealingly to Master Nathaniel. It would be like taking away the poor man's strawberries. The senator has peaches and roasted swans and peacock's hearts, and a fine coach to drive in, and a feather bed to lie late in of a morning, and the poor man has black bread and baked haws, and work. But in the summer he has strawberries and tunes to dance to. No, no, you would never cut the fiddle strings. Master Nathaniel felt a lump in his throat, but Master Ambrose was in ink. But Master Ambrose was inexorable. Yes, of course I would, he blustered. I'd cut the strings of every fiddle in Lud, and I will, too, unless you tell us what we want to know. Come, Mother Tibbs, speak out. I'm a man of my word. She gazed at him beseechingly, and then a look of innocent cunning crept into her candid eyes, and she placed a finger on her lips, then nodded her head several times and said in a mysterious whisper, If you'll promise not to cut the fiddle strings, I'll show you the prettiest sight in the world. The sturdy dead lads in the fields of Gramarye, hoisting their own coffins on their shoulders, and tripping it over the daisies. Come. And she darted to the side of the wall, drew aside the tapestry and revealed to them another secret door. She pressed some spring. It flew open, disclosing another dark tunnel. Follow me, pretty masters, she cried. There's nothing to be done, whispered Master Nathaniel, but to humour her. She may have something of real value to show us. Master Ambrose muttered something about a couple of lunatics, and not having left his fireside to waste the night in indulging their fantasies. But all the same he followed Master Nathaniel, and the second secret door shut behind them with a sharp click. Phew, said Master Nathaniel. Phew, puffed Master Ambrose as they pounded laboriously along the passage behind their light-footed guide. Then they began to ascend a flight of stairs, which seemed interminable, and finally fell forward with a lurch onto their knees. And again there was a click of something shutting behind them. They groaned and cursed and rubbed their knees and demanded angrily to what unholy place she had been pleased to lead them. But she clapped her hands gleefully. Don't you know, pretty masters? Why, you're where the dead cocks roost. You've come back to your own snug cottage, Master Josiah Chanticleer. Take your lanthorn and look around you. This Master Nathaniel proceeded to do, and slowly it dawned on him where they were. By the golden apples of the West, Ambrose, he exclaimed, if we're not in my own chapel. And sure enough, the rays of the lanthorn revealed the shelves lined with I need to look up this word, because I don't know what it is. Okay. Oh, come on. Poor. Did I spell that right? I'm sure I didn't. Okay, I didn't. Porphyry. I missed a Y. Porphyry, which is a hard igneous rock. I'm not familiar with that word. But that's basically being an audiobook narrator. You learn new things every day. The rays of the lanthorn revealed the shelves lined with porphyry coffins, the richly wrought marble ceiling, and the mosaic floor of the home of the dead Chanticleers. Toasted cheese, muttered Master Ambrose in amazement. It must have 2 doors, though I never knew it, said Master Nathaniel. A secret door opening on to that hidden flight of steps. There are evidently people who know more about my chapel than I do myself. And suddenly he remembered how the other day he had found its door ajar. Mother Tibbs laughed gleefully at their surprise, and then, placing one finger on her lips, she beckoned them to follow her, and they tiptoed after her out into the moonlit fields of Gramarye, where she signed to them. And my thing went skipping ahead again. where she signed to them to hide themselves from view behind the big trunk of a sycamore. The dew, like lunar daisies, lay thickly on the grassy graves. The marble statues of the departed seemed to flicker into smiles under the rays of the full moon, and, not far from the sycamore, 2 men were digging up a newly made grave. One of them was a brawny fellow with the gold rings in his ears worn by sailors. The other was Endymion Lear. Master Nathaniel shot a look of triumph at Master Ambrose and whispered, "A cask of flour and amber, Brosy?" For some time the two men dug on in silence, and then they pulled out 3 large coffins and laid them on the grass. "We'd better have a peep, Sebastian," said Endymion Lear, "to see that the goods have been delivered all right. We're dealing with tricky customers." The young man, addressed as Sebastian, grinned, and taking a clasp knife from his belt, began to prise open one of the coffins. As he inserted the blade into the lid, our 2 friends behind the sycamore could not help shuddering, nor was their horror lessened by the demeanour of Mother Tibbs, for she half closed her eyes and drew the air in sharply through her nostrils, as if in expectation of some delicious perfume. But when the lid was finally opened, and the contents of the coffin exposed to view, they proved not to be cerecloth and hideousness, but closely packed fairy fruit. I just want to check something really quickly. Just making sure I did pronounce that one correctly. I thought I probably had, but you never can tell. Toasted cheese, muttered Master Ambrose. Busty Bridget, muttered Master Nathaniel. Yes, that's the goods, all right, said Endymion Lear, and we'll take the other two on trust. Shut it up again and help to hoist it onto my shoulder, and do you follow with the other two. We'll take them right away to the tapestry room. We're having a council there at midnight, and it's getting on for that now. Choosing a moment when the backs of the two smugglers were turned, Mother Tibbs darted out from behind the sycamore and shot back into the chapel, evidently afraid of not being found at her post, and she was shortly followed by Endymion Lear and his companion. At first, the sensations of Master Nathaniel and Master Ambrose were too complicated to be expressed in words. At first, the sensations of Master Nathaniel and Master Ambrose were too complicated to be expressed in words, and they merely stared at each other with round eyes. Then a slow smile broke over Master Nathaniel's face. No moongrass cheese for you this time, Brosie, he said. Who was right, you or me? By the Milky Way, it was you, Nat, cried Master Ambrose for once, in a voice of real excitement. The rascal, the unmitigated rogue. So it's him, is it? We have parents. Oh, come on. Sorry, it's just this app. We parents have to thank for what has happened, but we'll hang for it. But he'll hang for it. He'll hang for it, though we have to change the whole constitution of Dorimare. The blackguard. Into the town, probably as a hearse, Master Nathaniel was saying thoughtfully. Then buried here. Then down through my chapel into the secret room in the guild hall, whence, I suppose, they distribute it by degrees. It's quite clear now how the stuff gets into Lud. All that remains to clear up is how it gets past our yeomen on the border. But what's taken you, Ambrose? For Master Ambrose was simply shaking with laughter, and he did not laugh easily. Do the dead bleed, he was repeating between his guffaws. Why, Nat, it's the best joke I've heard these 20 years. And when he had sufficiently recovered, he told Master Nathaniel about the red juice oozing out of the coffin, which he had taken for blood, and how he had frightened Endymion Lear out of his wits by asking him about it. When, of course, it was a bogus funeral, and what I had seen was the juice of that damned fruit. And again he was seized with paroxysms of laughter. But Master Nathaniel merely gave an absent smile. There was something vaguely reminiscent in that idea of the dead bleeding, something he had recently read or heard, but for the moment he could not remember where. In the meantime, Master Ambrose had recovered his gravity. Come, he cried briskly. We've not a moment to lose. We must be off at once to Mumchance, rouse him and a couple of his men, and be back in a twinkling to that tapestry room to take them red-handed. You're right, Master Ambrose. Oh, boy. I'm just messing up left, right, and centre. You're right, Ambrose. You're right, cried Master Nathaniel, and off they went at a sharp jog-trot out of... I don't know what a jog-trot is. And off they went at a... And off they went at a sharp... And off they went at a sharp jog-trot, out at the gate, down the hill, and into the sleeping town. They had no difficulty in rousing Mumchance and in firing him with their own enthusiasm. As they told him in a few hurried words what they had discovered, his respect for the Senate went up in leaps and bounds, though he could scarcely credit his ears when he learned of the part played in the evening's transactions by Endymion Lear. To think of that! To think of that, he kept repeating, and me who's always been so friendly with the doctor, too. And as a matter of fact, Endymion Lear had for some months been the recipient of Mumchance's complaints with regard to the slackness and inefficiency of the Senate, and in his turn had succeeded in infecting the good captain's mind with sinister suspicions against Master Nathaniel, and there was a twinge of conscience for disloyalty to his master, the mayor, behind the respectful heartiness of his tones as he cried, "Very good, your worship. It's Green and Juniper what are on duty tonight. I'll go and fetch them from the guard-room, and we should be able to settle the rascals nicely." As the clocks in Lud-in-the-Mist were striking midnight, the 5 of them were stepping cautiously along the corridors of the guild hall. They had no difficulty in finding the hollow panel, and having passed the spring, they made their way along the secret passage. "Ambrose," whispered Master Nathaniel, hurried. One second here. That said hurriedly, instead it said flurriedly. But I can't help wonder whether this is sort of a mistake in the translation. No, flurriedly is a word. Okay. It's a word in this book. So to get it onto the teleprompt app, sometimes there are differences between the manuscript and what shows up in the teleprompt. So I thought flurriedly, because it says whispered Master Nathaniel flurriedly. I thought that must surely be hurriedly, but nope, it's correct. Whispered Master Nathaniel flurriedly. What was it exactly that I said that turned out to be the password? What with the excitement and all, I've clean forgotten it. Master Ambrose shook his head. I haven't the slightest idea, he whispered back. To tell you the truth, I couldn't make out what she meant about your having used a password. All I can remember your saying was toasted cheese or busty Bridget or something equally elegant. Now they had got to the door, locked from the inside as before. Look here, Mumchance, said Master Nathaniel ruefully. We can't remember the password, and they won't open without it. Mumchance smiled indulgently. Your worship need not worry about the password, he said. I expect we'll be able to find another that will do as well, eh? Green and Juniper? But perhaps first, just to be in order, your worship would knock and command them to open. Master Nathaniel felt absurdly disappointed. For one thing, it shocked his sense of dramatic economy that they should have to resort to violence when the same result could have been obtained by a minimum expenditure of energy. Besides, he had so looked forward to showing off his new little trick. So it was with a rueful sigh that he gave a loud rat-a-tat-tat on the door, calling out, "Open in the name of the law!" These words, of course, produced no response, and Mumchance, with the help of the other 4, proceeded to put into effect his own password, which was to shove with all their might against the door, 2 of the hinges of which he had noticed looked rusty. It began to creak, and then to crack, and finally they burst into an empty room. No strange fruit lay heaped on the floor. Nothing hung on the walls but a few pieces of faded, moth-eaten tapestry. It looked like a room that had not been entered for centuries. When they had recovered from their first surprise, Master Nathaniel cried fiercely, They must have got wind that we were after them and given us the slip, taking their loads of filthy fruits with them. There's been no fruit here, your worship, said Mumchance in a voice that he was trying hard to keep respectful. "It always leaves stains, and there ain't any stains here." And he couldn't resist adding with a wink to Juniper and Green, "I dare say it's your worships having forgotten the password that's done it." And Juniper and Green grinned from ear to ear. Master Master Nathaniel was too chagrined to heed this insolence, but Master Ambrose, ever the champion of dignity in distress, gave Mumchance such a look that he hung his head and humbly hoped that his worship would forgive his little joke. Okay, that is the end of chapter 13 of Lud-in-the-Mist. So, Lud-in-the-Mist, in case you don't know, is a book by an author named Hope Mirrlees. I believe it came out around 1925, but I could be wrong. It's a public domain title for sure. And it's very often, it's been the influence of many a fantasy author. Think Susanna Clark. I don't recall her name. Who wrote Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. You can clearly see the influence there. And Neil Gaiman, if you recall, what's the one with Fairyland? That's the most clear example of his being influenced by this book. So, yeah. The audiobook should come out, let's see, probably in February, assuming I'm able to keep this schedule. We'll see. Anyway, time for chapter 14. Chapter 14. Dead in the Eye of the Law. The following morning, Master Nathaniel woke late and got up on the wrong side of his bed, which, in view of the humiliation and disappointment of the previous night, was perhaps pardonable. His temper was not improved by Dame Marigold's coming in while he was dressing to complain of his having smoked green shag elsewhere than in the pipe room. "And you know how it always upsets me, Nat. I'm feeling quite squeamish this morning. The whole house reeks of it." "Nat, you know you are an old blackguard." And she dimpled and shook her finger at him as an emollient to the slight shrewishness of her tone. "Well, you're wrong for once," snapped Master Nathaniel. "I haven't smoked shag even in the pipe room for at least a week. So there. Upon my word, Marigold, your nose is a nuisance. You should keep it in a bag like a horse." But though Master Nathaniel might be in a bad temper, he was far from being daunted by what had happened the night before. He shut himself into the pipe room and wrote busily for about a quarter of an hour. Then he paced up and down, committing what he had written to memory. Then he set out for the daily meeting of the Senate, and so absorbed was he with the speech he had been preparing that he was impervious, in the senator's tiring room, to the peculiar glances cast at him by his colleagues. Once the senators had donned their robes of office and taken their places in the magnificent room reserved for their councils, their whole personality was wont suddenly to alter, and they would cease to be genial, easygoing merchants who had known each other all their lives, and become grave, formal, even hierophantic in manner, while abandoning the careless colloquial diction of every day. I just need to redo that sentence. Okay. While abandoning the careless colloquial diction of every day, they would adopt the language of their forefathers, forged in more strenuous and poetic days than the present. In consequence, the stern look in Master Nathaniel's eyes that morning In consequence, the stern look in Master Nathaniel's eye that morning, when he rose to address his colleagues, the stone, the stone, the stern tone in which he said, "Senators of Dorimare," might have heralded nothing more serious than a suggestion that they should, that year, have geese instead of turkeys at their public dinner. But his opening words showed that this was to be no usual speech. "Senators of Dorimare," he began, "I am going to ask you this morning to awake. We have been asleep for many centuries, and the law has sung us lullabies. But many of us here have received the accolade of a very heavy affliction. Has that wakened us? I fear not. The time has come when it behooves us to look facts in the face, even if those facts bear a strange likeness to dreams and fancies. My friends, the ancient foes of our country are abroad. Tradition says that the fairies," he brought out boldly the horrid word, "fear iron, and we, the descendants of the merchant heroes, must still have some must still have left in us some veins of that metal. Must still have left in us some veins of that metal. The time has come to prove it. We stand to lose everything that makes life pleasant and secure: laughter, sound sleep, the merriment of firesides, the peacefulness of God. Excuse me. Oh, goody. I just belched. I belched. Uh, I apologize. I just got in a bit too much air there. I got a little too into it. The peacefulness of gardens, and if we cannot bequeath the certainty of these things to our children, what will boot them their inheritance? It is for us, then, as fathers as well as citizens, once and for all to uproot this menace, the roots of which are in the past, the branches of which cast their shadow on the future. I and another of your colleagues have discovered at last who it was that brought this recent grief and shame upon so many of us. It will be hard, I fear, to prove his guilt, for he is subtle, stealthy, and mocking, and, like his invisible allies, his chief weapon is delusion. I ask you all, then, to parry that weapon with faith and loyalty, which will make you take the word of old and trusty friends as the only touchstone of truth. And after that, I have sometimes thought that less blame attaches to deluding others than to deluding oneself. Away, then, with flimsy legal fictions. Let us call things by their names, not grosgrain or tuftifity, but fairy fruit. And if it be proved that any man has brought such merchandise into Dorimare, let him hang by his neck till he be dead. Then Master Nathaniel sat down. But where was the storm of applause he had expected would greet his words? Where were the tears, the eager questions, the tokens of deeply stirred feelings? Except for Master Ambrose's defiant "Bravos!" his speech was received in profound silence. The faces all round him were grim and frigid, with compressed lips and frowning brows, except the portrait of Duke Aubrey. He, as usual, was faintly smiling. Then Master Polydore Vigil rose to his feet and broke the grim silence. "Senators of Dorimare," he began, "the eloquent words we have just listened to from his worship the mayor can, strangely enough, serve as a golden prelude to my poor leaden words. I too came here this morning resolved to bring your attention to legal fictions, which, sometimes it may be, have their uses. But perhaps before I say my say, his worship will allow the clerk to read us the oldest legal fiction in our code. It is to be found in the first volume of the Acts of the 25th year of the Republic, Statute 5, Chapter 59. Master Polydore Vigil sat down, and a slow, grim smile circulated round the hall, and then seemed to vanish and subside in the mocking eyes of Duke. And then seemed to vanish and subside in the mocking eyes of Duke Aubrey's portrait. Master Nathaniel exchanged puzzled glances with Master Ambrose, but there was nothing for it but to order the clerk to comply with the wishes of Master Polydore. So, in a small, high, expressionless voice, which might have been the voice of the law herself, the clerk read as follows: "Further, we ordain that nothing but death alone shall have the power Further, we ordain that nothing but death alone shall have power to dismiss the mayor of Lud-in-the-Mist and High Seneschal of Dorimare before the 5 years of his term of office shall fully have expired. But the dead, being dumb, feeble, treacherous, and given to vanities, if any mayor at a time of menace to the safety of the Dorimarites be held by his colleagues to be any of these things, then let him be accounted dead in the eye of the law, and let another be elected in his stead." Dun, dun, dun. Okay. So that is Lud-in-the-Mist. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching it. Let me know in the comments if you did. In the meantime, if you want to listen to me narrating live, you can find me back here around 2:30 p.m. Pacific tomorrow, which is December 1st, and I'll be recording chapter 15. Bye for now.